Welcome back, listeners, to Coffee for Closers podcast. Last week, we just dropped a Titans of the Trades segment, and I have an awesome episode I'm going to be super excited about because, again, Coffee for Closers, it's all about business, whether you're making money, saving money. We are going to dive into some certain things, but it's all about tracking. And again, in one of our previous episodes, one of my favorite was actually a high-level church. And when you walk in and you actually see what's going on, like you walk in and you can tell that excellence is in this church. And we dove into like the tracking, the metrics. I think 1,000 different tracking metrics that they actually go through to make sure that they are, hitting the points. And so when people think about church, they're like, hey, there's no profits, or they don't think about it as a business. And it very much is. So I'm excited about this podcast because this is kind of everyone loves to make a lot of money and scream from the mountaintops like, this is my revenues. Well, at the end of the day, Mr. Matt, we've been friends for years. He's been working with us. We showed him under our hood. At the end of the day, one of my favorite things to say it's about eliminating ego any way you can. If you make $1 million and you spend $1 million, you're what, Matt?
You have $0 and you're broke.
And you're broke. But so many people love to scream from the mountaintops that they made $1 million. And that's where we love to bring Matt in, and we're going to introduce him. Thanks, Matt, for the time. Mr. Matt Plumer, he runs a, mid six figures coaching company and coaching business that does exactly what we're talking about. He's making sure that you're not just tracking revenues, but you're actually tracking profitability and what you're taking home. Like another one of my favorite quotes is, revenues feeds the ego and profits feeds the family. And so, this is one of the things where we're going to dive into different segments. But again, this is all about what Coffee for Closers is all about. So Matt, thank you so much, man. Thanks for your time, brother.
Absolutely. And another one, we can just go ahead and kick it off with another zinger is, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king.
There you go. Boom. I love that. We're going to dive into your story. We're going to hear all about your story, but I want to lead we always lead right up front. And my favorite thing about this is it's like results. We are a results driven company, organization, whatever I do. Like I want people preaching results. So you're you're in that seat and you're going to tell us all about that. But real quick, coming from the real estate space, you've made huge moves, huge shifts, pivots. You changed your life. You've moved and uprooted your entire family to make big moves. Like how, and again, you can dive into as much detail as you want. How have you managed to build a, mid six figures or multiple six figures coaching company talking about exactly what we're talking about today?
I think the number one, everybody always asks when you lose 100 pounds, how'd you do it? And I think it's so much more important to understand how you got to weighing 100 pounds more than telling you, oh, I drank a meal replacement shake instead of going to McDonald's twice a day for 100 straight days or for 500 straight days or whatever it is, because, it's just, it doesn't work, right? Most people aren't going to do the small things consistently long enough to get that result. So I believe if you take them back to a place of pain for you that helped, get you to 100 pounds, maybe you can help them head them off the path so that they could actually create their own transformation. And so, Travis, I'll always go and say, my wife and I were able to carve out enough margin in our life to ask ourselves bigger questions. And that helped with, all the way back to, 15 years ago when I was 300 pounds, alcoholic, addictive sports gambler. And over the next 12 months, we lost 100 pounds, became sober, quit smoking, started an online fitness business that helped other people lose weight. We started making more money, which led us to another question of how did we get to $100,000 or $500,000 worth of debt? And so we asked ourselves bigger questions, right? If we were making this amount of money, what were we doing with it? And that just helped us start to make sacrifices and changes and different choices to pay off and eliminate $550,000 inside of less than 4 years. And as we fast forward to the now of how did you become, move your family to from Reston, Virginia to Las Vegas? And how did you go from selling real estate and trapped by location income to location independent income? And quite frankly, Travis, it all goes back to asking ourselves bigger questions of why do we live where we live? If we could live anywhere, where would it be? And what would have to be true for us to live there? And I know those are things that I've worked with you and your wife on of your all's journey as well as like, hey, as we want this bigger life, let's start asking ourselves bigger questions so that we can find bigger answers.
For sure. Love it. Better questions, obviously. And again, on this, I'm always transparent. Like I've always been a, out earn, out earn your way. And I think in the later years in hitting wisdom, it's like, no, like again, I love the fact what you said as far as like carve out margin. Because again, that margin that you speak of is quote unquote freedom, financial freedom that lets you that are the answers essentially to these questions, and then reverse engineering. So we can dive into it. I'm going to dive into it right now because there's a couple different elements that I always talk about and I always lead from and have everyone of our guests leads from a place of leadership. And
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be based on results. I see all, and I'll see this too. I see all of these advertisements on like, how to close 10 deals a month. And I see it going to agents. I see it going to lenders. And I'm like, I know them. I don't think they've closed 10 deals a year. Um, so the reason why I say that is because, leadership, a leader never asks someone to do something they've never done themselves. So I ultimately come from a place of truth and see that to where I think the reason why you're such a successful coach and people want to follow you um, is because the straight up result that you have, when you have results so big that speaks for themselves, people are like, all right, you don't need to sell them anything. There's no marketing. You just simply tell your story. So, instead of kind of, we'll backtrack and reverse engineer this because, when people come to you, and I think I said this too, uh, what is it? The fatter the wallet, the sloppier the finances. And it's about cleaning that up. So, I think the best way we can talk about is you alluded on some of the things, how did you get to, way overweight, gambling, alcoholism, to whatever your extent, and like, what was that flip the switch moment? And then how did you basically, you know, lose all that weight, look at your financial picture, clean that up into a place to where now I know the way that you moved from Virginia to Vegas was in a place of power, and that I think people that gravitate towards you. So let's dive into your story a little bit more in terms of like, you know, gaining the weight, losing the weight, realizing that the gambling and alcoholism was not serving you, and like, where was that flip the switch moment? And then what did you do to get out of it?
Yeah. So the everything goes back to the beginning, where as a child, as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a young adult, I was simply following what I was watching happen in front of me, right? And that started with my dad. It started with my, the friends I hung out with, right? Proximity is power. And, I was proximity to my dad, and I was just doing everything that I was watching him. He was my mirror, right? So if I saw him drink, I drank, right? If I saw him smoke, I smoked. If I saw him gamble, I was like, hey, I can go place a bet somewhere else. If I saw him borrow money, I was like, sure, I'll just sign $25,000 a year to go to college, right? And so as all of those things, and I wasn't making any money, right? I was just doing what I saw being done. And so as I got through college and got out of school, I started making money. And the more money you make, right? I was making zero. So if you make $30,000 a year, you just become that much more of the thing you already are. I was an addict. Now, I didn't believe or know that I was an alcoholic. I was addicted to lifestyle. I was addicted to the lifestyle that the guys at the country club I was an assistant golf pro at had. So I wanted what they had. So I needed to go make more money. I just became a bigger version of that addict, right? I didn't take advice and find mentorship in my early 20s and late 20s and early 30s, right? I was on the same thing that you had said, which is go make more money, go do the things. You could buy more stuff because if you could make the money and you could afford the payments, you could buy the thing. And so when you apply that type of logic to every area of your life of spiritual, physical, financial, relational, and in business, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to, at that point, figure out how at 33, you're 300 pounds, alcoholic, addicted sports gambler, $500,000 in debt, marriage hanging on by a thread, and no relationship with Jesus. So that's how I
Absolutely.
got there.
Okay. We're there.
By simply following the people I was around.
Yep.
Right. And so when we had that moment on the couch of I was on one side and Melinda was on the other, and we're like, hey, can you go 90 days without a drink? I'm like, of course I can. But she'll still be the same person she is today. And I immediately was like blaming my gorgeous, amazing sweetheart of a wife why I was 300 pounds, drinking every night, not coming home right after an appointment, playing golf all day on Saturday, Sunday, and coming home drunk. That was because it was her fault. And eating McDonald's 3 times along the way. Right. And so I was looking external. I was never looking internal until Mike hit me square between the eyes, our counselor at the time, and he said, Matt, I've heard everything. I don't need to hear anymore. You got 12 months before you're dead, divorced, and jail or broke. And that was the thing that was like, man, if I don't change, if I don't go work harder on myself than I do on my job, if I don't go change, nothing's going to change. The only thing that's going to change is I'm going to lose my wife or I could lose my life. One of the two. And that sent me on a journey of personal growth and development. That sent me on a journey of asking questions of people who were further along than I were in other areas, weight loss and fitness, people that had gone through sobriety, right? Going through the program, AA. I didn't go through AA, but I went to an AA meeting because I needed to hear stories of people that had been where I was. Because again, my friends did not want me to become sober. My friends did not want, they loved Big Matt, right? They loved the drunk, fun, obnoxious, loud person, right? So I couldn't get it from the people I was running with. I had to go find other people. Which led me to a mentor, Jim, who exposed me to Dave Ramsey, which exposed me to church, which exposed me to Jesus, which, we lost, I lost 100 pounds. And think about this, Travis. In 5 years, lost 100 pounds, overcame alcoholism, gambling addiction, smoking addiction, paid off eliminated $500,000 of debt, accepted Jesus, and rebuilt my marriage with Melinda in 5 years. And when I hear that, that's a lot. When the listeners hear that, that's going to be a lot. And gang, fam, I'm telling you, that just got me back to baseline zero. We call that normal. Now, that's not normal in America, but that's how we're supposed to feel. Gary Brecka, I think it was Gary Brecka, Travis, that said, most people don't realize how under normalcy they live on a daily basis because of all the things that they either take or have come into their life. And so when they feel normal, they're like, I feel amazing, right? When they get their breath work and their grounding and all of these things, no. That's how you're supposed to feel. You're not supposed to feel the way you were, at 300 pounds. You're supposed to feel the way you do at 200 pounds. So now how can we optimize that, which is what happened, the next 5 years or plus is like, I knew I needed to go raise the bridge. I needed to go make more money. What's the number one way that entrepreneurs and solopreneurs know how to go make money? They either sell real estate or they sell insurance. One of the two.
Yep.
The easiest path of least resistance. I knew I needed to go raise the bridge, make more money. I got exposed to the world of real estate. I knew all the real estate agents in Northern Virginia. I met with all of them. I joined a team, sold my first house in 90 days, and then interviewed agents on what they would do with their money. And I didn't hear invest in real estate, hire a coach, create a marketing system, build out systems and processes. I heard pay last year's taxes and next month's car note, which was like, man, Ed Milet says this, you're the most equipped to help the person you once were. I was that person. And so I just made it my mission over the rest of my life to go help the real estate agent and the entrepreneur and the high income earning couple go build stress free wealth. So that was going to be my mission for the rest of my life.
100%. And just a slight backtrack, because it's I think your story is one that, like, people can just say you ended up there. But I mean, I think we all go through this story, and there is the slight edge, the
Yep.
slight edge that you can make.
Compound effect. Yep.
The compound effect is, things that you do every day for the better can make things better over the course of a year. Or, and I'll allude to this, to where, um, you know, the diet and nutrition, like, like, by not being good and being okay every day, you can slowly get into a worse place, to where a couple of years goes by and you're like, oh my God, how did I get here?
Mhm.
So I think that, if there's listeners here that are like, it's almost like, where are you at in that compound effect journey? Like, are you constantly taking the better steps to improve, or are you being okay and slightly just average or mediocre? Because that will lead to the bad place. Because, at the end of the day, we want you to flip the switch. And that's what we want to hear is, you hit a point to where you're like, holy shit, this is my life. The switch was flipped. And at that point, you started to say, I'm going to change my life. And then you took daily steps to get there 5 years later.
Yeah, and again, a great metaphor or analogy or a picture that people can that you can implement or you can vision um, when you're going through this process is a NASCAR race. They come off the pit road, they turn left on turn one, they turn left on turn two, they turn left on turn three, they go down the back straight, so they get to the turn four, they cross the start finish line 300, 400, 500 times, right? They go 300, 400, 500 miles, right? 100 to 250 laps, right? Did they actually ever go anywhere? They just literally went in a circle.
Yep.
And so when we're in this life of default and we're trapped, all we're doing is we're just making left-hand turns over and over and over. Now we might win the race that day. And if we win enough races, we might win the championship, but you never actually go anywhere. And so what I want to encourage you is that when you're at that fork in the road and you're ready to turn left, I want you to turn right. And now in this race, you're not going to hit turn one wall. You're going to make another decision. So are you going to drink, beer and vodka? Or are you going to drink water, soda, or some sort of energy drink so you can start getting off that track? Are you going to eat a garden salad with chicken? Or are you going to eat a garden salad with chicken? Or are you just going to have the pizza, fries, and hamburger? And you just start making those small choices, not all day, but you make them every day. And if you make them every day long enough, it turns into things that you just don't have to do, all day anymore. It just becomes default. I live now here in Las Vegas. I never have to think or make a decision if when I'm going to dinner at Caesar's Palace and we're going to go have Nobu, or we're going to go to Peter Luger's, or we're going to go to the Palm and we're going to go to have dinner. I never even have to make a decision. Am I going to stop off at the blackjack table? Am I ever going to have to, am I just not going to drink today or at the bar before dinner? Like, those decisions are ingrained and they don't exist anymore because I made enough right hand turns when I normally went left. And so that's my encouragement to you, is that if you do it long enough every day, then eventually all day, you'll never have to make those decisions, or they won't have to be that big of decisions the rest of your life.
For sure. And I think you progress from doing something off the cuff to daily habits to actually principles of, when you establish those principles, you just live a better life day in and day out without having to think it. Well, Matt, all right. Do we
And
want to dive in? Oh, go ahead.
and that's the last thing is, Travis, that applies to money too.
Yep.
So which we're going to talk about, and profit first, and how do I do all this, and all the things. If you just train your mind and you have a system that, hey, when I get paid, this, and this have to happen with this $10,000 or this 100 grand or this $1 million. And because And if you go out far enough, what has to be true for us to exit the treadmill at 50? We need this, then if that, then this. We have to do this with our money.
For sure. Actually, okay, you caveated. That's what I was gonna say is we can either go into daily habits and KPIs and tracking metrics, or we can kind of go into the financial aspect of those things, how it applies, you know, how to go from making 100, 200, 300K a year, and then starting to actually creep up that net profitability around the profit first approach. Wherever you want to take us, Matt, we're down for it, my friend.
I think, ultimately, again, let's solve the symptom, not the let's address the problem, not the symptom. Right? The problem with entrepreneurship and the problem with real estate agents and their money is that in the two biggest things that cause the most stress and anxiety is inconsistent income and financial disorganization. That is proven fact. That is not my idea. That is a fact. And so when that is true, what do we have to do to start unwinding that, right? If the wheel is going in one direction, right? Another metaphor, if the merry-go-round is going in one direction, the hardest part to go in a different direction is that moment of causing enough energy to slow the wheel down and send it the other direction. So that's where a lot of people are. And so when we run our business off of a profit and loss statement, or we run our business off of our off of past numbers, I have two questions for you. Where's the profit that your sheet says you have, and where's the money for the government that you owe based on the number that your sheet says you owe? And that's the sound that I normally hear.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, if it wasn't a skip, that was 3 seconds of silence, because people don't know where their money is. And so my biggest encouragement to you is plan your money before you spend it. Who needs it? Who gets it? Who deserves it? And where are you going to send it? Are you going to send it to one account and just try to figure it out that way? Or are you going to actually have an organized system, right? It's the number one way. It's the number one thing I help entrepreneurs and real estate agents do is set up a financial system for their money, right? We need a new place for your money to sleep. We need a new place for your money to hang out, because what's currently happening is not working.
Yep, 100%. And I think that this is where, whatever you want to call it, level 1, 2, 3, this is where you go from, like, we'll just say working a job to becoming a business owner, and as you progress through those things, like, you need to know those. And it's also kind of the universal principle of guidance. You know what I mean? Like when you actually set the principles and essentially the goals of what you want to earn and why, you know what I mean? God and the universe typically then provides based on those things, where as opposed to you randomly going out and I'll just say jam it. Cause I've been here. I've been probably through every ringer, and I know you have as well, to where you can't jam through it. You know what I mean? You can't outwork a bad diet, and you can't out earn bad spending.
Mm-mm.
Um, and if you haven't been there and corrected it, like back when I had a bad diet, you think you can outwork this. And the same exact thing goes for the money, to where it don't matter if you're making 100, 500, or a million, the bad spending is going to just destroy your money. So let's dive into like the systems and principles around, setting those universal systems up.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it all goes back to like principles, right? Are we going to try to out earn our spending? Um, and think about this, Travis. You and I have always had a great relationship, and a lot of our conversations are around health and fitness and finance, right? And obviously some spiritual stuff too. But what's your favorite dessert?
Mm,
Is it
crumble
like a hula
cookies.
pie from one of those restaurants there on the coast of Maui?
Crumble cookies been pretty good.
Crumble cookies. All
Yeah.
right. We'll use crumble cookies as the example. Or if you're at the grocery store, ice cream or cake or whatever it is. Like when you go get a box of crumble cookies, do you just sit there and just like crush them right in the store? No.
No.
They come home, you sit down, and then you watch your favorite Netflix show. And then, is there any chance the 1, 2, or 3 crumble cookies that you got at the store ever make it to the next day? Or are they just crushed sitting on the couch?
They kind of make it. Yeah.
They kind of make it. But if
Yeah.
you've got ice cream, right? Do you ever just sit there and crush ice cream in aisle 6?
No. No.
No, it's on the couch. And so it's not the ice cream's fault. It's your habit of actually bringing it in and not having a plan.
Yep.
Money is no different. Money is no different. So if that $10,000 check hits your account and you don't have a plan, it's already spent. Now, whether it goes backwards towards obligations or it goes forwards towards obligations, that's irrelevant. The money is already spent. And so that's the number one thing I want people to take action on. Where's like the first place to go, coach? The first place is I want you to write down on a piece of paper your next closing and who all needs to get that money inside of your business, right? Inside of our business, the number one person is Matt and Melinda, the owner. The second place the money goes is Matt, the person that sold the deal, sold the house, sold the coaching program, sold the whatever. So now that person needs to get paid. Now, who else needs to get paid, Travis? The federal government needs to get its money,
Uncle Sam.
right? Uncle Sam. And then the business gets its money. So now there are 4 places that money needs to go. The owner, the person that sold the deal or did the work, the government, and operation expenses. Write those 4 responsibilities, those 4 roles of people in your business get the money. Real estate agents don't make as much as they think, spend more than they care to admit, and that causes them to be behind on taxes and or retirement. So out of that $10,000 check, you're probably at best getting $4, $5, or $6,000. Maybe even 3, depending on how many expenses you have. And so now when you're like, hey, I make 50 cents out of every dollar, and you send that money home, what happens to that money? Does it just go and pay bills, or we need to give, save, and invest and spend and enjoy our money? And so now you start carving this thing up to the roles and responsibilities that the money has. Travis, how quickly do you start realizing that you probably either need to do one of 2 things? Spend a ton less, or we need to go make more money, right?
Really.
And if the answer is make more money, that's not earning more than you're spending. That's actually understanding is like, hey, for me to go hit the targets that I have to go make this or I have to go invest this for a series of months and for an extended period of time. Let that drive how much you need to make, not how much you're currently spending drive you to how much money you need to make. And I think when people have that, they flip that switch to say, I need to go invest $5,000 a month for the next 20 years to go hit the targets that I want 20 years from now, because they might be a little late in the game. Fine. Use that number to help drive how many houses you need to make or you need to sell, or how many coaching programs that I need to offer, or how many master classes I do, or how many people need to join the challenge, or how many people need to join the wealth department, right?
Yep.
Use that, because that number, Melinda and I have that thing dialed at 55. We need to have this amount sitting in assets. We need to have, that's X. Y needs to be predictable, reoccurring residual income. And if X and Y happen, then Z happens, which means we get to go live our next chapter of life somewhere else.
100%.
Right. And so, and now all of that drives how many Facebook posts I make, how many emails I send out, how many DMs I have, how many conversations, how many podcasts, how many stages, all of those things. It's not just, oh, I rolled out of bed and said, oh, I need to send 50 messages today. No, Melinda and I went out to 55. We went out to 60 and said, hey, when do we want to throw our phone in the ocean to where I don't have to shoot the TikTok. I don't have to go on Instagram every single day. I don't have to do that because I want to go play 300 rounds of golf. I want to go look at the ocean, put toes in the sand, and see mountains all in the exact same day. Where is that? There's only a few places on earth that happens, right? How much does that life cost? What's required to be there? And then over the next 7, 8, 9 years, what do we have to do every day to get that?
Yep, 100%. And I think the biggest takeaway here that, we've been guilty of, and I think a lot of people, and this is what I think a lot of people go and they seek or search for, but it's that clarity and certainty, essentially of the questions. Like, the questions are, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? How long is it going to take? And then, as you kind of alluded at the beginning of the show, is you then reverse engineer the questions to what you have to do, as opposed to, again, most of the time when you roll out of bed, you go close a deal, and it's not even real estate, it's business in general, to where you go close a deal and then that money is gone. If there's no plan, then, if there, what is it? If you don't have a plan for life, then life will have a plan for you. It's the same thing with the money. Like, that money's gone. Like, that is life's money. And if you don't have a plan for it, life will take it immediately. So
If you don't pay attention to your money, it will flow to those who do.
yep, 100%. So, um, we've touched base on a lot of this. So this is actually one point of business that I've always talked about, because I think that there's these 4 schools of building wealth. There's savers, debt killers, cutting expenses, and then earning more. And we already kind of talked about it. You can't out earn a bad diet. So, like, what is like the essential blend of, I need to save money and have cash in the bank. I need to cut the debt so, the interest don't eat up all my money. I need to cut the expenses, my living expenses, so, my income can be greater than that. And then what is hey, I need to go make more money. Like, what are those 4 schools of thought, and your kind of thought process behind them?
Yeah, first place I want everybody, so transformation is a 3-step process. Awareness, decision, intentionality. So awareness, the very first step, this is your 300-pound sitting on the couch moment. This is your alcoholic. This is your addictive sports gambler. This is your, I've got $500,000 of debt moment, right? Is understand how much you spend business and how much you spend personal. What's your current burn rate today? And have no shame, blame, or guilt over it. And ask the question, is that okay? Chances are it's not. It's what you want, but maybe it's you've gotten a little too big for your britches when it comes to this. What's Warren Buffett say? Hey, when the tide, everybody's swimming when the tide is out, but when that tide rolls in, and you start seeing who's skinny dipping, or it's the other way around. When the tide's in, everybody's swimming. When the tide rolls out, everybody, you can tell who's skinny dipping, right? You can tell who's thinks they love being right and looking good at the same time. So what are those things? I want you to delay gratification. I want you to put a downward pressure on lowering your water, reducing your spend. What's required to get from A to B? Not forever, A to B. What are the required expenses that if you did not have, you could not sell a real estate? You couldn't sell a house. There's not very much you actually need to sell a house. So what's that? Eliminate everything for 90 days. On the personal side, do the exact same thing. What's required to live in your house and stay alive and eat, breathe, and be physically fit for 30 to 60, 90 days? Eliminate and be protected, right? Insurance and stuff like that. And reduce those expenses down as far as you can, and see where you are. Now run everything back through. Do you have enough money to cover, your personal bills and your business bills? Now let's go implement a system that serves you, not serves the bills, serves the people, serves the expenses, right? This is where profit first comes in. This is where adding age to your money comes in, right? The wealth method is earn, or wisdom, earn, accumulate, lend, track, and help. Right? This is the accumulation. We need to add age to our money. Now let's dream a little, Travis. You and Nisa go on a dream date and say, hey, this is where we want to be at 45. This is where we want to be at 50. This is where we want to be at 60. All right, what has to be true? Well, we need $15,000 a month coming in every single month, whether we hit the button on Facebook or not, whether we auto dial or we make a phone call to our database or not. Great. Let's just do some math on that. Okay, great. How many houses is that going to take? That's going to take 3 houses. I'm only selling 1. Great. Now we need to go make more money. Not for money's sake, not because of our stuff's sake, because those 3 houses, one's going to cover home base, 2 is going to help us start structuring the future, 3 is going to help us retire with dignity, become multimillionaires, and have the dream life of, the life of our dreams. And then now you've built it the right way versus like, well, I would always get to 3 deals a month. Well, 3 deals a month isn't going to be enough if you don't lower the water before you go raise the bridge.
100%. And I think so many people do that to where they basically say, I'm going to make the money and then I'll create a plan around it, as opposed to creating a plan for the money
Yeah.
and then working towards that.
I mean, that's the same thing as going to Orange Theory Fitness and burning 700 calories and getting 36 flat points, and then, driving to McDonald's and getting breakfast and then driving home.
Yeah.
And then tell yourself, I'll just go do another workout.
For sure. And I think if I was going to kind of like the big takeaway of just today's, like, because we could talk and we dive into the KPIs, tracking habits, like very nitty gritty stuff. But I think the biggest takeaway is just like the clarity on like, hey, like, what are your goals? And it sounds so silly and possibly stupid, because it's like, I remember hearing it too, like Ed Milet on a podcast, and you hear things and you automatically hear them and you've heard them and you just dismiss them most of the time. But one time I was hearing him and he was just talking about, I think you said it too at the beginning of the episode, like, who are the 5 people that you're around the most? And I remember him say that, and immediately I was like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And then I kind of started to like think about it. I was like, do any of the 5 people have the results that I'm shooting for? And I was like, no. Like, it was like that audit moment. And so with this, it's the same thing. Like, how clear are your goals? How clear is your plan moving forward? Because it's like, you've probably heard this before a gazillion times, but actually reflect, like, what is your day, month, 6-month, year, 3-year, 5-year, 10 goal? Because you know what I mean? I'm going to go back and dial mine back in. So
Yeah. I think, when I made a post, what is it, the 10th or this filming, on the 8th, we closed on our house here in Las Vegas. It was our 3-year anniversary of living in Las Vegas. And, I was reflecting back and I'm like, I wrote down, move to an area with 300 days of sunshine so I could play 100 rounds of golf. I can't tell you how many times I wrote that down in the middle of, summer or the middle of winter, living in Northern Virginia when it was 13 degrees, wind chill of -5, and, or it was, in the summer of, of Northern Virginia, and it was 80 degrees with 90% humidity, and it was rain the next 4 days. And lo and behold, I went out and built a business with obviously Melinda's help and support on her end with corporate America that allowed us to go do that. And Travis, frankly, a very short period of time.
yeah,
You know,
I've
I can't
actually
believe it's been 3 years living in Vegas, and we would not have made the move like of where we did, how we did, and the process if Melinda and I were not on the same page, reading from the same sheet of music, having her goals and my goals, because we had different goals when it came to building a house, but we had one similar target, which was we wanted to move to a place where we had the sunshine, the no rain, the no state taxes, the golf, and the outdoor quality of life.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually quite impressive because I actually kind of have witnessed. I remember you were in Virginia. I remember the move, I did
Yeah.
see that post as well in terms of like what you had built with that, um, the Vegas house. And again, it's I always speak from a place of like from self. I never speak for anyone else. And I remember like you bought that house with such control and power that you were like, the down payments here, like this was the money allocated. This was, and I remember like being like, God, and like ultimately reflecting on like income to where I'm like, when I buy a house, it's not like that. So that was just a super impressive and super super stoked for you for the life that you built in a short amount of time.
Yeah, we had buckets for everything, right? I mean, we had a down payment bucket. We had we hired a moving company to pack, move, and unpack us. We had a bucket for that. We had a bucket for closing costs. We had a bucket for furniture. Um, Still to this day, like I underestimated dramatically how much furniture and cactus cost. Um, and of turf. And again, we were doing this all in post 2020. And so we bought this house in 21 and like, man, we went under contract September of 21. And you were listen, if you were in the world of real estate, that was a really sexy interest rate that was available in October or September of 21. And I mean, every month I just saw it go up and up and up and up and knew that all that meant was we were just going to have to adjust a few things on the lifestyle as my income, as I kept raising the bridge, we would have to put a downward pressure on lifestyle for a small season of life to make sure that the interest rate that we went under contract with of 2.875 and it doubled, right? I mean, our rate's 5.625. But again, I had it under control because we had all of the money set aside for the things and we just had to make some adjustments. And, um, never in my life did I think and jump up and down for a 5.625 interest rate.
It sounds pretty darn good right now.
There's a lot of people that would take that.
Yeah, 100%. Real quick, just so we can know, because we always we, we avoid people just cheering from the mountaintops. We ultimately praise for people and we want to applaud and cheer when they're on it. But the one thing that we always talk about here is like the trenches, because it's like, I think a lot of people are in the trenches. So like in the past 5-10 years of business, these things like what was or where was that point where you like woke up and you were like, I don't know how I'm going to move forward? Like, what is the darkest days that woke you up at night? What was causing it? And then what did you do to move forward to where you are today?
Yeah, I think you know, all the things that and I don't think that's a really good question. I haven't talked about this publicly. It's been, inside of our inner circle for a while, but our personal inner circle, but like even the the weight loss, the addiction, the debt, I mean, all that stuff it was so easy looking back. Like it was hard in the moment, but I mean, you're staring at a brick wall, right? And so like all you had to do is just get to the next day and get to the next day and get to the next day. And so as we went and we built this thing, I had a plan to just, hey, could we make it 6 months and our income not fluctuate, right? And then after about just really cruising along in life, we got a phone call um, that an investment that we had made, an investment at a company that we had, invested in and had bet on, and the investment was going bad and it didn't exist and it was part of a big, inner working scheme. And I remember those sleepless nights afterwards, like we lost all this money and our friends lost all this money. We don't know if we'll ever get it back and all this stuff. And those were really dark moments that Melinda and I had. Together. This is probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I knew that what helped pull us out was like, if we just go to our core values and we just go to our beliefs, and if we just go to the things that got us here, none of this stuff will matter 3 to 5 years from now. And we're working through that. We did it. We're well past that. And I would encourage that anyone that when you have any type of physical loss or financial loss or family relational loss, like it's gonna suck in the season, right? I'll never forget the day I got a phone call from my dad or from my sister that said, or it was actually my brother-in-law that said, "We need you to pray. Aaron's on the way to the hospital. Your dad had a heart attack." And like, I'll never forget that dark moment. And those next 90 days, like 30 days might as well have been 5 years. But you know what? I still miss my dad, but I'm a better human because of that, right? I'm a better leader. I'm a better husband. I'm a better, coach. I'm a better friend. I'm a better mentor because I went through that season. I'm a better coach because I went through a season of loss, 18 months ago. And again, so any of you that are in a season or something's going to happen, like, I just encourage you that it's just for a small window of time. And if you go back to your beliefs of value, of your key relationships, like, the only relationship that mattered to me in those seasons was 100% Melinda, and that we just rebet on ourselves and rebet not only for us to go to do the work, but us as a husband and wife. And then the people that I surrounded myself with to really, we rounded the bases and charged the hill. Um, we made it.
Yep. 100%. Dude, that's
So, like, have we made it all the way? No. But are we in a better place than we were 18 to 24 months ago? 100% yes.
for sure. And I think it's the moving forward, because I think here's like one of my old mentors used to just always say, because I'd younger too, I would always be like, I'm going through all this, and you feel like you're the only one going through it. And he'd be like, you're not special. Everyone goes through seasons, and like seasons of loss are, I always talk about it being there's a gift of perspective in there that comes from it. And I think, and I can't remember the exact quote or saying around it, but that, the downs, like there's lessons there's lessons in loss that wins never will teach you. And I think that's where we dive in and we really, solidify. And sometimes it's God purging the bad and, like, helping refine your character and who you are. Um, but yeah, it is diving into that perspective and being able to have perspective of what happened, and then diving into, like, well, what was the lesson? Because if you don't mind me, like, we don't have to talk about it at all, but like, out of that experience, from that financial loss with that investment, like, what was the pearl? We'll call it the pearl, or the lesson that you walked away with.
Oh, I mean, that's another podcast that we should definitely shoot.
Cool.
One, like, it helped us really nail down that our beliefs and our money values were 100% spot on. And we got away from those and we got distracted, and the devil came in, because the devil is always there. And when you're distracted, that's when you trip and fall. And that happened to us. So that was number one. Number two is, as a coach today, I now have a different perspective when my clients come to me and said, "Hey, I want to invest in this," or, "Oh, hey, I got approached with this." And I look through it with a completely different lens than they're looking through it. And I get to ask a whole different series of questions that I get to, because I've gone through the pain, right? And that's why people pay for coaching. That's why people invest in themselves to go coaching, because most of the coaches that they're looking for have gone through the fire, have stepped on the landmines, have twisted their ankle, have fallen down in the potholes, so that you don't have to. And that was an expensive loss for us, but the best part about it is I'm able to help so many people avoid that loss for them, because I went through it. Because I just have a different perspective from a different seat in the stands.
Yep. 100%. Yep. No, dude, I think you earned it. For our listeners, we're gonna wrap up here. Either, like, what's the best advice, or, like, what's that one thing, if someone's listening today, that you're like, do this today, what would that one thing be?
I mean, I hate to say it's so simple, but man, like, just don't spend money before you make it, right? From a personal finance standpoint, don't spend money before you make it. A. B, if you're ever going, when you start investing, because we all have to invest. We have to invest money in something. Before you invest, know who and what you're investing in. And if you don't know, it's okay to say no. It's okay to gain wise counsel. It's okay to interview 3 or 4 financial advisors. It's okay to send stuff to your attorney, because there is wisdom in counsel. And the more people that you can run ideas through or opportunities, you're going to find the right way is generally probably the most conservative. It's the least sexy. It's the most boring. But when you look at the wealthiest people, they did not make their money on fly-by-night opportunities. They made their money in index funds and real estate
Yep.
or business.
For sure.
And I would just encourage you that don't spend money before you make it. And when you start investing, um, generally boring is probably the best path.
Magic in the mundane, as
Magic in the mundane,
Tim Story
100%.
would say. Well, cool, Matt. Where can people find you, man? Talk about counsel. People want to seek you or find you online, social media, all that.
Social media, mattplumer.com, Plumer. Travis will have all these links. Mattplumer.com, Coach Matt Plumer on Instagram, Matt Plumer on Facebook, and I do offer a masterclass most weeks. Mattplumer.com/masterclass is a great place to plug in and get some of this information live each and every week.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate it. This was a wonderful, fantastic round one. I'm sure we'll have round two here later this year. We're going to dive a little bit more granular, nitty gritty stuff on some of the financial stuff. So, Matt, thanks so much for your time, my friend, and we'll talk to you guys later.
All right. See you, Travis.
All right. Later, coffee for closers.